Hey guys, I wanted to share a book with you today. This is for our older students, and even our parents and teachers might enjoy this one. It's called The Coffee Bean by John Gordon and Damon West. Let's start the book together. Are you a carrot, an egg, or a coffee bean? Abraham usually loved science class, but not today. Today he hated science, school, and everything in his life. As his favorite teacher, Mr. Jackson, scanned the classroom, he noticed Abraham was not his usual self. After class, he told him to stay behind and asked him what was wrong. Abraham, whom everyone called Abe, told Mr. Jackson how stressed he was about school. He had tests coming up and a big paper due, not to mention that he was really nervous about the big football game Friday night. He dreamed of playing football in college, and he had heard that college scouts were going to be at the game. A win would also bring his team one step closer to a state championship. To make matters worse, his parents were fighting a lot and had even used the word divorce for the first time. Abe said he tries to ignore all his problems, and he spends a lot of time on social media watching videos, but that doesn't help, and it actually makes him feel more negative and depressed. It's hard living up to the expectations everyone has when you're playing well. It's even harder to hear all the negative comments when you're playing badly, he added. Mr. Jackson nodded and told Abe he knew exactly how he felt, and went to the whiteboard and erased the scientific formula. Then he drew a picture of a carrot inside of a pot of water. What happens when you put a carrot in really hot water? Mr. Jackson asked. It gets hot, answered Abe. Well, it does more than just get hot, answered Mr. Jackson. I want you to go home tonight and try it and see what happens. Abe said he would do it, although he wondered how putting carrots in hot water was going to help him with his problems. Oh, and if you've never cooked before, please ask for help. I don't want you to burn yourself, Mr. Jackson said with a big smile as Abe walked out of the classroom. The next day after class, Abe told Mr. Jackson that the carrot he put into hot water softened after about 10 minutes. Yes, the carrot was softened and weakened by its environment. It was impacted by the conditions it was in, said Mr. Jackson. Sort of like me, Abe said. Actually, just like you, Mr. Jackson responded before going to the board and drawing a picture of an egg inside of a pot of water. Now tell me what happens when you put an egg inside of a pot of boiling water. Oh, that's an easy one, Abe said. You get hard-boiled eggs. Even I know that. Great, Mr. Jackson responded. The hot water caused the eggs to harden. The egg is hardened by its environment and the conditions that it's in. Unfortunately, it happens to a lot of people as well. They become mean, angry, negative, and sometimes numb because of the difficult environments they are in. They grow to hate life and hate people. Their heart hardens and they lose the desire to love and be loved. I don't want this to happen to you, which is why I'm teaching you this lesson. I understand, said Abe, who was beginning to see why Mr. Jackson was talking about carrots and eggs. The carrot is weakened and the egg is hardened when I put hot water in it. Put it in hot water. I get it, Abe said. I don't want to be like a carrot or an egg. No, you don't, said Mr. Jackson. But there's one more part of the lesson and experiment you need to experience and understand. Mr. Jackson erased the picture of the pot with the egg and drew a new picture with a coffee bean inside of a pot of water. What happens when you put a coffee bean in really hot water? Mr. Jackson asked. I have no idea, answered Abe. Well, that's what you need to do next, Mr. Jackson said as he grabbed a few coffee beans from a jar on his desk and placed them in Abe's hand. Go home and put these in hot water for about an hour and tell me tomorrow what happens. And be careful not to burn yourself, Mr. Jackson shouted as Abe left the room. The next day after class, Abe approached Mr. Jackson and excitedly shared that the coffee beans he put into hot water eventually turned the water into coffee. I knew ground coffee beans make coffee, he said, but I didn't know a coffee bean would do the same thing. Yes, it works the same, Mr. Jackson said. It just takes longer. It's like magic, Abe said. It is, Mr. Jackson answered, but I prefer to call it transformation. He then went to the board and drew a picture of 3 pots side by side with a carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean inside. It's one of the simplest and most powerful lessons you will ever learn, Mr. Jackson said as he pointed to the board. Life is often like a pot of very hot water. It can be harsh, stressful, and a difficult place. You will find yourself in environments and facing conditions that test who you truly are and can change, weaken, or harden if you let them. Like all the stuff I'm going through now, Abe said. Exactly, Mr. Jackson responded. You are feeling the pressure of school, papers, and tests. You are feeling the heat that comes with the expectations of being a great football player. You feel like your parents' marriage is about to boil over. The hate on social media and the negativity in the world is rising. It's all one big pot of boiling water. But you have a choice. You can be like the carrot that is weakened and softened by its environment. You can be like the egg that is hardened by its environment. Or you can be like the coffee bean that transforms its environment. And when I look at you, I don't see a carrot. I don't see an egg. I see a coffee bean who will overcome challenges and change the world. I want you to remember this lesson for the rest of your life. Wherever you go, whatever you do, remember that you are a coffee bean and you have the power to transform any environment that you are in. No matter how hard things get or how hopeless things look, don't give up. Realize that we don't create our world from the outside in. We create and transform it from the inside out. If you think you are a carrot, you will believe the power and forces outside of you are more powerful than who you are on the inside, and you will become weaker. If you think you are an egg, you will believe the negativity in the world has power to harden your heart and cause you to become negative like the world. But if you know that you are a coffee bean, you will not allow the outside world to impact you. You will know what the power inside you is greater than the forces outside you. And with this insight, you will transform your environment and world from the inside out. The power is on the inside. Be the coffee bean. Mr. Jackson then reached into his pocket, pulled out a coffee bean, and handed it to Abe. Keep this in your pocket as a reminder of who you are and the power you possess. I know the best is yet to come for you. Abe left the classroom energized and excited to be a coffee bean and ready to take on the challenges in his life, starting with the big football game Friday night. He was no longer stressed about his paper, school, or his parents' marriage. His perspective had changed, his energy had shifted, and his state of mind was elevated. That week, when his coach talked during practice about controlling what you can control and not worrying about what the media says or the outcome of the game, Abe knew it was simply meant to be a coffee bean. He told his coach and team the story of the carrot, the egg, and the coffee bean, and he gave coffee beans to his entire team. He told them it didn't matter where they played, who they were playing, and it didn't matter whether the crowd cheered or booed. The power was not in the stands. The power was inside them. They played the best game of their lives that Friday night and went on to win the championship. The book continues on to talk about Abe and some of the other stories and experiences that he had and how he overcame those things by controlling how he responded and reacted to those things. So I challenge you guys to be coffee beans in this crazy world that we're living in right now, and that we can find good, positive things to do, and that we can always remember that we are in charge of our reactions and our responses, and that we have a choice in everything that we do. I miss you. I love you. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you enjoyed this story. See you guys.